Tariff on, tariff off. Does anyone know what's happening? The reactions have been quite dramatic, from Canada's, well, we'll give as good as we get, to Europe's, yeah, when we get our act together, we'll give as good as we get too. Right through to the UK, well, let's not risk the special alliance, so we're just going to sit back and wait and see what happens and hope. And China's quite quiet, as their cars are, well, they're so cheap to make that they can easily add the tariff and remain very competitive. In all of this, one major country is remarkably silent, but is carrying out probably the best response anybody could think of. I'm Dave. This is Dave Takes It On. Well, in simple terms, Trump imposes tariffs to force manufacturers to stop exporting cars into America, but instead set up factories there making them, thus creating a vibrant industry and full employment. And Trump, of course, will be the hero of the hour. But sometimes the response is totally unexpected and the exact opposite of what you actually want. Well, let's look at the top 10 cars for sale in the US. Not pickup trucks, but cars. And what do you notice? What is so glaringly obvious with this list? Simple fact is, the Americans don't make small cars. In fact, they make very few cars of any sort. They've gone almost all in on large or very large SUVs and large or huge pickup trucks. The cars in the top 10 are nearly all Japanese. So let's see what the Japanese are doing. And most apparent is that they've not resorted to shouting, threatening, or using the media. Most people simply haven't heard anything at all. And that's deliberate. See, the Japanese, in their own way, they're a very honourable nation, and they see the tariffs as a very personal attack. They have worked with all countries around the world for decades now to offer joint ventures, and Trump has seriously upset them personally. Well, the first stage, they consider it's no good shouting, just get on with the action. So they've already decided that if the price of American cars and pickups and large SUVs soar with the introduction of tariffs, the Japanese cars won't. They'll simply absorb them on the cars and they sell them into America at a much cheaper price. Well, this very much pushes Japanese brands like Nissan, Honda, Toyota, Mazda, Mitsubishi way down in price, making them enormously attractive in a market of spiralling price rises. But the attraction of assembling in Mexico and Canada is now gone. So Japan is quietly but surely shipping production back to Japan. If they've got to pay the tariffs anyway, they may as well get the cars manufactured and assembled in Japan. That offers a massive boost to employment and a boost to their home economy, which is much needed. Japan now also finds a number of advantages at their feet. First, Toyota suddenly discovers that their gamble about not dashing into EVs is about to pay off big time. See, they've been concentrating recently on making the best, most economical hybrids and PHEVs in the world, and they are phenomenally good. World beating, in fact. Well, certainly better than anything the US produces. So, Japanese cars, certainly hybrids and PHEVs, will be both better and cheaper. Manufacturing everything themselves in Japan also means that they will no longer have to buy any parts from the US. That's a real slap in the face for Trump and a cost cut for the Japanese. They can make them cheaper back home. Well, this is a bit like Formula One, where one team might take a gamble and hope for a safety car late in the race to change tyres, and then finds that indeed a safety car happens and they get an enormous advantage. Toyota's found these things can't be planned, but if you take the gamble, they can pay off and you stand to gain an awful lot. The hybrids and PHEVs Japan exports to the US will simply be among the best in the world and very, very competitive. Then, of course, there's Nissan, or Nissan as they call it in the States. They had a huge success with their Leaf in the early days and gained massive knowledge of EVs in the process. But it's now very, very long in the tooth, old. So Nissan are speeding up their EV next-gen models, and they will be launching them very much earlier than they previously announced. In fact, several models are now being fast-tracked simultaneously, so watch out for them. They'll be arriving far sooner than expected. Well, of course, they're firmly based in Asia, and so have the entire Asian market right on their doorstep. America, once the favourite, is no longer the honeypot it used to be, so they've recently turned to China. Yeah, they're selling hybrids into China as China buyers go almost 100% EVs. China makes those 100% EVs, and Japan increasingly makes many of the hybrids that the Chinese buyers still want. Not yet on the same scale. That market is also disappearing rapidly, but they currently, or until recently, exported 40 billion to the USA, 8 billion to China. It's a good chunk. Then they have the rest of Asia, including India, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, amongst others, and they're finding it is a very much overlooked market, overlooked mainly by themselves. There's huge potential there just waiting to be tapped for both hybrids and EVs. Well, to drive home the disrespect the US president has shown them, Japan has also been quietly dumping some of their US Treasury bonds in simply massive numbers. Japan is by far the largest holder of US Treasury bonds, with over 1 trillion, leaving China floundering in their wake with about 759 billion. Oh, the UK, by the way, is third, 765 billion. Well, Japan recently sold off a huge chunk, but they also bought a load back again, and these were at the very much higher interest rate. Now, for those who don't know, governments don't borrow all the money they need to operate via banks and loans like we would. The favoured method is Treasury bills, notes and bonds. These are, in effect, government-backed loans to the relevant government that pay interest throughout their lifespan and pay back face value, capital, at the end. Bills are generally short-term, usually less than a year, notes typically 2 to 5 years, and bonds generally much longer, 20 to 30 years. They have traditionally been seen as very secure investments as they are fully backed by the government. And those governments can and will do whatever it takes to pay them back at the end, as to default would be, pretty terminal. With bonds, you buy one, you get the interest during its term, and then at the end of it, you get your money back. Safe and sound. Well, at least until now. Trump has just about crashed the markets in a way that's already starting to affect Treasury bonds. If the government is not seen as safe and sound and financially secure, then investors just stop buying them. That means that new bonds will need to pay out a very much higher rate of interest to attract any buyers, and that leads to higher interest rates for everyone and ultimately inflation in the issuing country. Japan's sale of a large share of their bonds recently has already shaken the confidence in the safety side of the equation. People are beginning to wonder, maybe they're not so safe and secure after all. And this has an immediate and direct effect on the US debt market and how easy or cheap it is to buy money. A huge sell-off is not good news. Uncertainty is not good news either, and the markets have already issued warnings that the US debt market is not working properly, possibly to the point of threatening the ability to sell future bonds. This might just push others like BRICS to ditch the dollar, set up their own currency, and likewise with oil trading. Traditionally, it's always been based on the dollar, but there might be moves now to end that reign, pick another currency. Well, the Japanese approach is certainly bold and deep, but quiet. But it shows they cannot be pushed around. Instead of telling the US what they are doing or have done, they're just quietly letting Trump discover what it is they have done. But the tactics run deeper, because if the Japanese return their manufacturing to Japan, then all of the current Japanese car owners in the States will now have to buy their parts direct from Japan. And under Trump, they will attract that 25% tariff, meaning dearer parts, dearer servicing and repairs. Well, the net result is that Japan is highly unlikely to open any manufacturing in the States at all, ever. If the Americans want cars, as opposed to massive $100,000 plus pickup trucks, they're going to be drawn towards the cheaper Japanese offerings. Even if Ford or GM or Stellantis switch to making smaller family cars, they might find that their costs rise rapidly at the same time as the Japanese cars get cheaper. The Japanese could monopolize the US car market, forcing out Ford, Stellantis and GM altogether. Their buyers already favour the Japanese. Just look at the top 10. If the big three stick to making their high-priced luxury end models rather than the real budget models, they're going to find a very much smaller market. International manufacturing with parts and components from around the world is what we got used to, and the system worked rather well right up until tariffs arrived. Now all is total chaos. I'm predicting that the US car manufacturing is not going to get any of a boost, nor are many, if any, companies ever going to relocate there. There just isn't time. It takes 3 to 5 years to build a new factory and get up to mass production, and the next presidential election is only just over 3 years away, and who knows what the result of that will be. But the net result in the meantime is that Americans will pay more for their cars, more for their parts, and they'll have even less choice. But then who can they blame? They did have a free and fair election less than 6 months ago, and they very firmly made their choice. And it's not as if the winner didn't spell out in great detail what he would do if he won. Well, let this be a quiet lesson to all in the UK. I received plenty of comments about layoff politics. What difference does a single vote make? Or why should I get involved in politics? Doesn't do anything for me. Well, maybe this will make you take a fresh look at the United States and have a bit of a rethink. Politics is key among everyday living. I'm Dave. Thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please click the like button. Everyone counts on the YouTube algorithm. If you would like to see more, please subscribe. Details down below. And that means that we can notify you every time we launch a new video. A big thank you, as ever, to our Patreon members who go that extra mile. Without them, we would not be making these videos in the same number or detail. Thanks very much. I'm Dave.